Valentine's night in New York can feel like a movie even without famous people in the frame. But on Feb. 14, St. George's Episcopal Church turned that romance into a lived-in set piece. Candles against winter stone, a white dress under a feathery coat, tuxedo black next to proud shades of blue. There, in an intimate evening ceremony that friends describe as a beautiful surprise rather than a months-teased spectacle, Maya Hawke, 27, married singer-songwriter Christian Lee Hutson, 35. The date did double duty, Valentine's Day as a wink and a vow, and the guest list read like the Venn diagram of her life. Parents Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke sitting on the same side of joy, younger brother Levon among the siblings, and a chorus of Stranger Things castmates, Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Sadie Sink, Natalia Dyer, Charlie Heaton, Joe Keery, spilling out onto the steps like a graduating class that never quite wanted to leave. The pictures that slipped into feeds the next day were brisk with February air and shorthand symbolism. Maya in a classic white dress, wrapped against the cold in an oversized downy coat that felt as comfortable as it was editorial. Christian in a crisp tux, the minimalist foil to feather and lace. Uma, 55, in a light blue gown with matching shoes that made the steps look like a carpet rolled out just for her child. Ethan, also 55, in elegant, all-black simplicity. The images told you most of what you needed. This wasn't a performative red carpet wedding trying to be a music video. It was a New York family choosing a church, inviting their circles, and letting the night hold them. Their love story didn't begin under spotlights. Years before anybody called him fiancé, Hutson was a studio and stage companion, opening for Phoebe Bridgers from 2022 to 2023, writing and recording in the same rooms where Maya was building an unexpected, serious folk resume of her own. They met in that musical neighborhood and stayed there long enough for friendship to harden into rhythm. In 2024, he co-wrote and played on tracks for her album Chaos Angel. She, in turn, wrote with him on his Paradise Pop. 10. When host Julie Slater referred to Maya as his fiancée during a SoCal Sound session last year, he didn't stop to script a reveal. "Yeah," he smiled, a confirmation that sounded like two people who had long since decided privately and were only just now catching the paperwork up to the life. So this is the tone to expect from this wedding look back. Less hype than heartbeat, less projection than the public breadcrumbs the couple has chosen to leave. The fact pattern is ample. A surprise ceremony at St. George's. Famous parents present and visibly tender. Co-stars turned chosen family. A relationship that grew where the songs did. What matters is how these pieces fit. The daughter of two cinematic icons carving out her own lane and inviting her collaborators to stay. An indie songwriter who has spent years at the edge of other people's spotlights stepping into one that suits him. A date that's corny on paper and unfakeable in practice. The rest, the toasts, the vows, the first dance song, belongs to a room that closed its doors on purpose. St. George's Episcopal Church doesn't need a set designer. Its ribbed vaults, stained glass, and worn stone build gravitas the moment you climb the stairs. That's part of why the setting worked so well for a wedding that the couple kept quiet until after it happened. In a city where the sound of a camera shutter can change the mood of a room, they picked a place built for voices, not lenses. By all accounts and images, they also picked a time, an evening ceremony that made February a feature, not a threat. The coats in the photos aren't an inconvenience, they're a decision. Maya's oversized, feathery wrap isn't about hiding a dress. It's about honoring a season, leaning into theatrical warmth rather than muscling through for the sake of a clean line. Winter weddings are their own mood. Breath visible, hands warm in one another's, city air making the kiss feel earned. Hutson's tuxedo choice signaled the other thing at work, clarity. Where she was texture, white dress, coat soft as exhale, he was outline. It's the kind of stylistic balance that mirrors their musical dynamic. Maya's Chaos Angel lives in impressionistic lyrics and lilting phrasing. Christian's Paradise Pop. 10 plays with crystalline songcraft and a songwriter's sense of cut. On their wedding steps, the visual rhyme felt unforced. A couple who has spent long hours color correcting songs in studios seemed to have done the same for themselves. The surprise label can sometimes read like spin, a way to make ordinary privacy sound like an exclusive scoop. Here, it's simply accurate. There were hints, of course. In April, Paps caught Maya on the phone in Manhattan, a diamond catching late winter light from a ring finger. Last year, Hutson casually affirmed fiancé on SoCal Sound Session, then went back to talking about Process and Phoebe Bridgers. But there were no textured magazine covers promising details, no sources say Dacre previews, no content calendars. The save the dates went to people with last names that meant something inside the bride and groom's phones. And when the doors opened, it wasn't influencers streaming. It was the small stampede of relatives and friends fighting the urge to cheer in a quiet street. Even the guest choreography felt like the right proportion. You could tell where the generational heat lived. Ethan and Uma sharing a grin that remembered more than the world will ever know. Siblings hovering within grab range of whatever emotion hit. Stranger Things castmates filing past with the slightly overwhelmed glee of kids seeing a summer camp counselor become an adult in real time. It looked like what it was. A surprise wedding that didn't try to be secret. A public family that didn't try to be perfect. A church that has seen enough New York love to welcome another without blinking. Children of very famous parents get used to their private milestones being treated as the culture's trophies. That's why one of the loveliest things about this Valentine scene is how untransactional it felt. Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, both 55, both dressed in colors of their own, didn't attend as icons to be photographed. They attended as parents, bodies angled toward their daughter, faces open in ways that suggested a long, well-lived learning curve. Married from 1998 to 2005, parents to Maya and Levon, generous with their own reinventions, quietly reliable in the stands when the kids' performances called them. The images captured that calibration well. Uma's light blue gown and matching shoes weren't trying to rewind to Kill Bill yellow or Pulp Fiction white. They were mother of the bride softness with a woman's authority sewn in. Ethan's all black wasn't a mood. It was a frame, understated, respectful, perhaps a nod to a lifetime of performances where he has learned not to pull focus from a story that isn't his. Between them and the candid that did the rounds, Uma left, Maya center, Ethan right, you could read the whole project of co-parenting in a public landscape. A decision to stand beside each other when the moment belongs to the child. A commitment to be photographed on the same page, even if their lives live in different books. Levon Roan Thurman Hawke's presence flickered in and out of the frames, a brother doing brother's work, equal parts logistics and emotion. That, too, felt right. Siblings are the small constant in families rearranged by divorce, and weddings often become little reunions of their own. Ethan's children with Ryan Shawhughes, Clementine Jean and Indiana, and Uma's daughter Luna, with Arpad Bussin weren't the center of the story. Whether they slipped into and out of the pews isn't ours to own. But their place in the paragraph matters. Families that co-parent well do so by expanding, not entrenching. The set of Ethan and Uma's lives by now includes more than a hyphen. It includes other names, new vows, parallel kitchens. Weddings have a way of honoring that fact without handing the microphone to it. The other family on view was the professional one. The Stranger Things cohort rings a very specific bell in 2026. Young actors who came of age together on a juggernaut. Friends whose bond was annealed by 4 seasons. Worth of monsters and rap nights. Colleagues who have learned how to be both stars and friends in rooms that can confuse the two. Seeing Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Sadie Sink, Natalia Dyer, Charlie Heaton, and Joe Keery in church pews does more than thrill the fandom. It signals something healthier. A cast that retains its warmth off-set, that knows how to show up for one another's actual lives, that treats a co-star's wedding like what it is, a moment you are lucky to be invited into. In a business whose mythology worships the lone genius, an ensemble's solidarity is a much better love story. Hollywood loves a how they met that sounds like a logline. This one reads like liner notes. Maya Hawke's second act, in parallel with acting, has been her serious tilt at songwriting and recording. Across 2 albums and a run of singles, she's proved she isn't dabbling in singer-actor cliché. She's writing poems that remember their songs, singing with a timbre that refuses to punch above the lyric. Christian Lee Hutson has been orbiting that same universe longer than she's been famous. A songwriter's songwriter with a gift for lines that sound like they've been there forever. A collaborator who helps other artists find the simplicity inside their ambition. He opened for Phoebe Bridgers in 2022-2023, a stretch that put him in the bloodstream of the most influential indie scene of the moment. He co-wrote and co-produced in rooms where candid often outruns clever. They met years ago while recording, the people report notes, and that elliptical phrasing does a lot of honest work. In music, you meet twice, the first time as professionals, the second when your ears learn to trust each other. By the time Paradise Pop 10 landed in 2024 with Maya's name in the credits and Chaos Angel arrived with his fingerprints on arrangements and ideas, it was clear the second meeting had happened. Hutson's Carousel Horses featured both his longtime ally Bridgers and, as SoCal Sound session host Julie Slater noted in a clip that made rounds later, his fiancée Maya. His affirmation, "Yeah," was less announcement than confirmation, a songwriter's economy. One word, no adjectives. There were external markers, too, for those inclined to build a timeline. In April, a Manhattan sidewalk caught Maya with a diamond shimmering into a phone call. She and Christian turned a theater opening. John Proctor is the villain at the booth, where she was there to cheer Sadie Sink, into an unshowy red carpet debut. The festival calendar told its own story. Inside the fashion world, they were a front-row pair at Prada's FW25 show in Milan on Feb. 27. Outside it, they were companionable in selfies and soft focus posts. He wrote on Valentine's Day 2024 that the first song from Chaos Angel was out, that he loved it, that he loved the record, that he couldn't wait to share the rest. 12 months later to the day, the sharing looked like vows. The important thing about this origin isn't that it can be plotted on a gossip site's timeline. It's that it makes narrative sense in their chosen lanes. Maya has been explicit about the friendships that gird her creative life. Christian has built a career out of making other people's art better without insisting his name be in lights. Friendship into romance is a well-worn trope for a reason. It's also an explanation for how collaborators manage to make the leap in a business that makes leaps risky. The studio is, for honest musicians, a place that tests souls as much as songs. Editing yourself in front of someone is one version of trust. Taking a verse that doesn't flatter you because the song needs it is another. If those habits travel to a wedding aisle, so much the better. By the time they walked into St. George's, Maya and Christian had already left enough public breadcrumbs to make the Valentine's wedding feel like an ending that begins. Their social media wasn't the empty-calorie kind. In February 2024, his Valentine's post talked less about relationship than about art. The first song from Maya's new record, Chaos Angel, is out now. I love this song. I love this record. And let the caption's last line do the rest. In July, her carousel of candid snaps on Instagram put images of the pair side by side with planes and beds and the blank spaces between busy lives. Her words were simple and declarative. I am lucky enough to know this guy. He is a poet, musical genius, and crucially, grateful. It read less like possession than partnership. The Prada FW25 front row photo she posted in March 2025 wasn't a fashion flex alone. It was a document of a couple comfortable being seen next to one another in a space that often prizes being seen over seeing. Their red carpet debut at John Proctor is the villain months earlier was similarly calibrated. She was there to support a friend, Sadie Sink, in a play about young women finding and losing power. He was there to support her support. That's the kind of sentence you only get to write if you've spent time with people who don't confuse "look at me" with "look with me." For those who wanted words, Maya offered a thesis on the Zach Sang show that doubles as a caption for the whole arc. "It's awesome. I cannot recommend highly enough dating your friends," she said. "It's the best. They know you, not just a piece of paper for them to project their image of perfect girlfriend onto." That's an insight pulled from hard experience and long observation. In a business that can turn women into screens for men's projections and men into ladders for women's ambitions, choosing friends first is a form of rebellion. It says the crush doesn't get to write the character already exists. This is why the pieces fit. A Valentine's Day wedding risks cliché when it's propped up by roses and hashtags. It turns tender when it's the crest of a wave that started with long hours, laughter that didn't have to be public, and the glow of two people who have already proved, in the way they talk about each other's work, that they'll keep being each other's first audience. The Stranger Things classmates at the church steps looked like kids who have learned to spot the real thing. Uma and Ethan looked like people relieved to witness it. And Christian Lee Hutson, whose name is better known to music nerds than to Netflix watchers, looked like a man who knows what to do when someone he loves is in the spotlight. Stand in the light beside her, then step back just enough so the dress can be seen. Celebrity culture loves to make a wedding predictive. Collaborations teased, baby names imagined, a move plotted on a map. It's wiser and kinder to leave most futures to the people living them. What can be said, with safety and a clean conscience, is that Maya Hawke and Christian Lee Hutson's union looks like a bellwether for a kind of creative adulthood that's increasingly common among their cohort. The doubled life of serious art across mediums without sacrificing the ordinary pleasures of a quiet ceremony in a winter church. Professionally, they are already proof that cross-pollination can be a stabilizer rather than a storm. Maya's acting slate has both tiny and tentpole indie films and Inside Out 2 voice work, and a global juggernaut in Stranger Things that allows her to collect cash and time in the right proportions to make albums that don't ring hollow. Christian's discography and touring history have taught him the value of long games and short lists, creative communities that choose depth over churn. They already write together. Whether they keep doing that after a wedding is their business, but their public compliments suggest a shared ethos, moving slowly enough to make the thing good, adding joy without adding noise. Culturally, the wedding is a generational moment that doesn't need to be overstated. The daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke remarried the worlds in which her parents made sense: New York art, church ceremony, a party filled with co-workers who act like cousins, and made room for a folk singer who handles chords like film stock. This is less Nepo baby weds indie darling than second-generation artist chooses the middle way. The glamorous pews were still pews. The photos were still taken on stone steps. The best-dressed people were still hugging, not posing. In an era when a lot of weddings have turned into content companies, a marriage that looks like a family event is a cultural event in its own right. What remains private should stay that way. The readings they chose, the vows they wrote, the playlist that played when the church doors closed, that belongs to the witnesses, not the timeline. Representatives didn't return requests for comment. That is less shade than boundary. The ring spied in April, the whispered "yeah" in a radio session, the feathery coat in February, not breadcrumbs for the world, but enough for the world to know where to send the flowers. If you're a fan, the right response isn't to demand production stills. It's to say congratulations, and then, like the castmates and the parents on the steps, let the couple set the pace for what they want to share next. Weddings tell stories in fabric, especially in New York in February. Maya Hawke's choice of a classic white dress under an oversized, feathery winter coat worked on two levels at once. It solved the season. Valentine's night is still winter in Manhattan. And it telegraphed a mood. Warmth, texture, the kind of theatricality that isn't performative so much as practical poetry. In the photographs, the coat doesn't hide a gown from the cameras. It honors the cold, making the church steps look less like a backdrop and more like a threshold. The silhouette reads like her music, soft-edged, romantic, a little vintage, never trying to outshine the lyric. Christian Lee Hutson's tux answered that note with clarity. Crisp, unfussy lines, a frame to her feather, the visual equivalent of a strong chord under a wandering melody. If you know his records, you can hear the analogy. Folk pop precision with room for ornament, a songwriter's insistence on letting the song, or in this case the bride, do the work. Standing side by side, they look like what they are, a collaboration that balances warmth and definition. Her parents' palettes extended the story. Uma Thurman's light blue gown, paired with matching pumps, softened winter stone with a maternal pastel that didn't try to compete with white. It's an elegant shade that lives between icy and sky, fitting for a February night where breath steams and hearts melt. Ethan Hawke's all-black ensemble was the opposite of funereal. It was respectful line and tone, the garment equivalent of someone who knows how to be present without pulling focus. If you've ever watched him act in ensembles, you know that move. Don't add noise, add weight. The church did its own styling. St. George's Episcopal, with its high-ribbed ceilings, stained glass, and worn steps, supplies gravitas other venues have to order from catalogs. Choosing it signaled a taste for place over spectacle. A winter wedding in a real church is an aesthetic choice of its own in 2026, when so many weddings aim for spaces that look good in aerial clips. It also suggests a loyalty to the city that raised her. Plenty of Hollywood children get married in California canyons. A New York bride with two very New York parents brought the night home. Even the candid accessories, the diamond ring first spotted in April, gloves clutched against the wind, bouquet stems peeking from a sleeve, felt as uncalculated as they were cinematic. The coat, in particular, will stick in memory the way a good film costume does, as character note, not fashion headline. It let her be a bride in a climate she didn't bother to fight. It let the photographs hold dignity instead of goosebumps. And because this is Maya Hawke, the look likely came with intention. Dress the life you actually live. She's an actor who writes albums in quiet rooms and a musician who shows up on carpets in borrowed couture. The coat on a church step sits perfectly between those worlds. Glamour doesn't have to be loud to be generous. If you squinted, the line of young faces moving up those steps looked like a Hawkins High reunion. In reality, it was a reminder that Stranger Things has always been two stories, the supernatural one on screen and the human one that unfolded across a decade of long days, rapt nights, and shared rites of passage. Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Sadie Sink, Natalia Dyer, Charlie Heaton, Joe Keery. The roll call reads like a Netflix splash screen, but their presence in a pew felt like something rarer. Co-workers who stayed friends long after the cut. Seeing them, there didn't just thrill fandom. It charted a path for an ensemble aging into adulthood with grace. Casts of cultural juggernauts can splinter under the pressure of individual careers and public expectations. This group has mostly done the opposite, showing up for one another's films, plays, bands, and, now, vows. The Booth Theater sighting in April, Maya and Christian making a red carpet debut at opening night for John Proctor is the Villain, where Maya was there to support Sadie Sink, was an early tell. This wedding was the sequel. Stage family taking its seats in a church while cameras clicked outside and a city minded its own business. There were little sub-stories running through the frames. Joe Keery, the internet's favorite hare, moving in the background with that half-amused ease that made him indispensable on and off screen. Natalia Dyer and Charlie Heaton, often photographed together in other contexts, slipping into a moment that wasn't about them and looking quietly happy to be there. Wolfhard McLaughlin, Matarazzo, boys who were children when the world met them, arriving as men, suits and shoulders squared for their friend's big night. Sink, whose own star has been burning brighter with each project, beaming like a bridesmaid without a dress code. It looked like what anyone in their late 20s would want. The friends who knew your weird teenager version witnessing your adult one with affection. Why does it matter that a TV cast shows up at a wedding? Because parasocial culture tends to flatten artists into their IP. When they keep showing up for one another as people, when they treat a friend's vows with the same reverence they bring to a rap party, it pushes the story back into the rooms where it belongs. It also sets a tone for younger fans. This is what success can look like: fame, yes, but also community that survives success. There's also a New York theater thread running through this group, and it hummed under the night. Several of them started on stages. Several of them have returned to them. All of them seemed happy to attend a ceremony that belonged to a New York church rather than a brand. In a business that writes found family into scripts, this pew looked like the real thing. And for Maya Hawke, who has been balancing sets with studios and fashion weeks with folk clubs, having that ensemble in the room was a benediction of its own. The line that says they met while recording music years ago hides a whole scene. Maya Hawke's second career has been a patient, serious tilt into songwriting that started as curiosity and became craft. Christian Lee Hutson grew up on the inside of the American indie folk ecosystem, a quiet constant in rooms where Phoebe Bridgers by Genius and their many satellites have been reinventing sad songs for smart adults. Their overlap was Hollywood. It was a community that treats collaboration less like a ladder and more like a neighborhood block party. Hutson spent 2022-2023 opening for Bridgers and writing with a constellation of peers whose default settings include sharp lyrics, strange harmonies, and a distrust of Sheen for Sheen's sake. Hawke, around the same time, was releasing the kind of introspective, home-recorded folk records that used to earn sneers when actor names were on the spine, and instead earned reviews that talked about poems, not profile. When he worked on Paradise Pop 10, she wrote with him. When she went into Chaos Angel, he returned the favor and contributed. If you listen closely, you can hear each in the other, her melodies letting a little more structure in, his arrangements letting a little more air out. That kind of mutual influence is both textbook and risky. Couples who create together can get lost in one another's work, or worse, mistake feedback for affection. The comments they've left in public suggest they learned the first rule of creative partnership early: celebrate without smothering. Her July 2024 post, "He is a poet musical genius, lucky enough to write with him," reads like a bumper sticker for healthy collaboration. His Valentine's shout to her single foregrounded the art and let the relationship glow at the edges. Even their rare red carpet jaunts, the booth theater debut for a friend's play, not their own premiere. A front row at Prada, treated like a date night, not a campaign, suggest a couple who know the difference between shared work and shared hype. Will they make more songs together? Almost certainly. Should fans declare the marriage a band? Probably not. One of the reasons that whole Los Angeles indie folk world has thrived is that it treats boundaries like part of the craft. People's names end up in one another's liner notes without ownership games. Friends cameo on tour and on tracks without losing their centers. If you want to see how that ethos holds in a marriage, the right place to look is Instagram. It's the credits page when the next records land. Or, better yet, the way they talk about each other's work in interviews. Notes shared in public without pretense, praise anchored in specifics. What's certain is that the night at St. George was as much singer-songwriter romance as it was celebrity wedding. A folk couple in a Gothic church on Valentine's feels like a lyric someone wrote for them between takes years ago. The vows might as well have been in 4/4. And if you needed a metaphor for a union like this, Christian's place on the step under Maya's feathered coat has one: rhythm and melody, holding the same bar. In an era when plenty of celebrity couples turned their romances into serialized content, Maya Hawke and Christian Lee Hutson kept their engagement and wedding old-fashioned: a handful of hints, an art-first public life, and a single night in a real church. The breadcrumbs were there for anyone paying attention, but they were always attached to something besides the relationship itself. There was the SoCal Sound Session moment in 2025 when host Julie Slater, talking through the making of Paradise Pop 10, casually said, "Your fiancé Maya and Hutson." No pause, no wink, said, "Yeah." A confirmation in a conversation about songwriting, not a reveal engineered to go viral. There was April's Manhattan Street photo, Maya on her phone, a diamond winking, that drifted into feeds because paparazzi work Manhattan like it's a beat-covered village. She didn't post it. She didn't need to. There was their red carpet debut at the opening night of John Proctor is the Villain again, not a gala for them, but a night they used to cheer Sadie Sink and blend quietly into theater lovers' shots. There was the Prada FW25 front row in Milan, a fashion industry smash cut that she posted in March 2025, seated with Hutson, both looking amused by the circus. And there were the posts that felt like small essays. Christian's Valentine's 2024 caption that focused on the song, the first song from Maya's new record, "I love this song. I love this record," and left the rest implied. Maya's July 2024 slideshow, bed, plane, couch, ending in a line that named him a poet musical genius and emphasized her luck. The uncomplicated "It's awesome" on the Zach Sang show, paired with a philosophy, "Date your friends," that explains how you keep your head when you're a Nepo baby and a folk singer in the same breath. What you didn't see says as much as what you did. No magazine cover exclusive promising peaks behind closed doors. No sources say countdown to a venue. No live-streamed shower or registry drops disguised as brand partnerships. Representatives for both bride and groom offered no comment to press inquiries the day after. The polite version of "we told you what we wanted by letting you see what we wanted." The photos that exist are largely street-level, church step glimpses, BACKGRID frames with the cold in people's cheeks, and that feels like a choice. They let New York be New York. You can't stop a camera on a sidewalk. You can control how much of your interior ends up in a carousel. And they did. This isn't to scold couples who monetize love. It's just to note the relief of one that didn't. The public got the outlines of a story, recording studios to runway seats to a winter wedding with friends and family, without having to consume the speech. That sits well with both of their creative lives. Their music is most persuasive when it feels like eavesdropping in a room where you're welcome but don't own the air. Their wedding, by all signs, was the same. The most gracious thing fans and press can do with a wedding like this is to let the couple own the narrative. Congratulate, then recalibrate. That means a few practical courtesies that any good wedding guest would recognize. Don't tag-bomb their feeds. Their posts have historically been thoughtful and infrequent. If they choose to share a photo or a caption, let that be the official word. Resist the urge to fill their comments with demands for dress details, vows, or honeymoon plans. If you're moved to write, make it small and specific. Congratulations. Wishing you music and laughter. They don't owe strangers the inside of a church. Avoid conspiracy timing. The Stranger Things cast in those pews is a boon for fandom, but it isn't a prop for speculation about future projects, storylines, or franchise gossip. Treat their attendance like you would any friend. A mark of affection, not a hint at IP. If you're going to revisit the show, do it because you love Maya's performance as Robin Buckley, not because you hope a wedding cameo signals a plot leak. Celebrate through the art. If you're itching to mark the moment, buy or stream Chaos Angel and Paradise Pop 10. Share your favorite lyric of hers that he helped shape or his that she helped write. Support the rooms where they met, small venues, indie labels, the community of songwriters who keep making records feel intimate. That's how you gift a couple who are also artists. Honor the family's boundaries. The photographs captured an extraordinary thing. Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke standing on the same step because their child asked them to. Let that image be enough. Don't message siblings and half-siblings for takes. Don't turn co-parenting grace into clickbait with reunion language. If you want to applaud, do it in the key of respect. Two adults who divorced decades ago show up as parents and leave as people who love the same daughter. Finally, if you must post from the steps where BACKGRID stood, keep faces out of frame that aren't the couples or their parents. You can be part of a culture without eating it. The next time you want to participate, go stream a song or buy a ticket to a play instead. In the age of parasocial everything, good fandom looks a lot like good manners. Wish them well, give them room, then let the winter church hold the rest. It's easy to make a New York Valentine's wedding a metaphor. Don't. The facts are already lovely enough. Maya Hawke and Christian Lee Hutson met where chords and verses are made, built a friendship that held long enough to turn into a vow, and walked into St. George's Episcopal Church on a cold night to say, "I do," in front of the people who have known them best. Her parents, Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, took their places with the kind of unforced grace that tells you decades of life have been turned to good. Her Stranger Things cohort filed into pews like cousins at a family reunion. Winter wrapped the steps. A feathery coat became a character. A tux stayed crisp. Cameras did what cameras in New York do. The rest stayed inside walls that were built to keep promises. You can draw lines from their back through the breadcrumb trail. The yeah in a radio interview, the April ring, a John Proctor opening night, a Prada front row, 2 albums with shared names in the credits, an Instagram caption that called a partner a genius without turning him into a brand. You can even, if you must, make a hopeful guess about the kind of art 2 people like this will keep making. But the more generous choice is to mirror the way they've told their story so far. Enough to invite you in, not enough to trap you there. So congratulate them. Play Chaos Angel and Paradise Pop, 10 in the same evening, and listen for the places hands met on fretboards. Save a photo of a coat on a step because it made you feel warmer about February. Then let the couple be the ones to decide what their next public picture is for. They seem to know what they're doing. Winter in New York has a way of blessing the people who let it be winter.